you have a Bible, I hope you do, turn with me to John's Gospel, chapter 13. Of course, we printed out, if you haven't, the text for this morning's passage as well. Let me introduce to you Nathan. Nathan attends two churches on Sundays, one because he likes their music, the other because he likes the preaching. And his involvement in both, frankly, goes no deeper. At the first church, he slips out just before the last song winds down and drives to the other church 5 minutes away. He even factors in time to stop by McDonald's for an Egg McMuffin. He times it so precisely that he walked into the second church just as the pastor starts his sermon. So I'm looking for Nathan now. Now, you may think that rather exaggerated, a kind of preacher's story. Actually, Nathan is a true, real-life character and a friend of Joshua Harris, the author of this book that I'm holding in my hand, Why Church Matters. And we're going to make it our book of the month in Lansdowne, not because we want more people like Nathan attending LBC, but because in its 117 pages, this book does a brilliant job of saying many of the things that we'll be hearing in our new series on Sunday mornings. There it is, the community that God longs to see. There is the LLF, the Lansdowne Lego family. Mr. and Mrs. Lego, and baby Lego there, and I can also see, chap with a hard hat, must be a member of the Regeneration Building Project. So look, get the book, but turn up on Sunday mornings with or without your Egg McMuffin. Darren Peach, who led earlier for us, he did a deal this week with Keith Jones Bookshop, where, of course, he's one of the directors. And they have agreed to knock £1 off the price of this book, which means that you are getting a great book at a discount, £8 for 1 month only. I don't mean £8 discount, I mean that's the price of the book with £1 off. Let me tell you, don't go to the online bookstores. Support your local Christian bookshop. Now, we've made it really easy for you because there's an order sheet outside in the entrance area where you can sign up for your copy, or in the stream venues. For those streamers amongst us this morning, when you go to your stream venue, you will find also an order form. One more thing about this book before we get down to the book, the Bible, is in fact the second edition. It's got a new cover and a new title. Exactly the same content inside as before, although now we have a list of discussion questions. Personally, I thought the first title cover, we'll see the slide of it now, was much more exciting. Stop Dating the Church. See, that's a book that sells, doesn't it, really? That makes you want to buy it and read it. And that is what the Nathans of our generation are doing, sadly, today. They are church dating. If not exactly church dating, then they are putting in their hour or two at the weekend, but taking the rest of the week off. It is not a serious relationship with the church, because we are increasingly a generation of consumers. So Christians shop around. We look for a church that suits our lifestyle or ticks the boxes that we want now ticked until a new, better product comes along. We attend, but we don't want to settle down and invest. We're not into commitment. We only want to date the church. So how do we start taking church seriously? How do we start getting more committed to our relationship with the church? How do we begin to see this crazy community as God's best for us? His loving purpose for our spiritual health and growth? Well, let's take the book and open it to some of the 58 one another's in the New Testament, beginning with today's. Love one another. Jesus, as you know, says that to his disciples on their last evening together. He's preparing them for his departure and asking and probing and exploring how they are going to manage without him. He tells them in these chapters 13 to 17 of the Gospel, that there are two resources or legacies that he's going to leave behind for their benefit. The first is his Spirit. And Jesus spends a great deal of time during this evening with his disciples exploring the importance of the Holy Spirit's work in and through them. The other resource or legacy is each other. That's how they're going to cope without him. Hang in there together, says Jesus. Love one another. It must have been an evening full of tension. Chapter 13 begins with these interesting words. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. And in the passage that Sarah read, you can feel the emotion, can't you, in Jesus' words there in verse 33. Where Jesus says, "My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me. Where I am going, you cannot come." So into this highly charged atmosphere, Jesus says that love is the way forward. That's my new commandment to you. But what's so new about that commandment? It's as old as Moses, the ancient law of God with which every Jew was familiar, had love as its central pillar. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So what new value is Jesus adding to this old commandment? Here we have then the first of three elements which can transform the local church into the community which God longs to see. First element, a new principle of love. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. That's the new value which Jesus is adding to the old commandment. To love, that's not new, but to love as Jesus did, that is. And that's the gold standard now, he says. That's the benchmark of the community God wants to generate, this love of a different kind. Now, what does the love of Christ look like? Well, flick back to the beginning of the chapter, where John says, there in verse 1, having loved his own who were in the world, Jesus now showed them the full extent of his love. So Jesus shows them. You know the scene? The disciples are eating what will be their farewell meal together. And Jesus, during the meal, gets up from the table, takes a towel, and begins to wash their feet one by one. Here is the servant king, showing them the full extent of his love. You see, the symbol of the community God longs to see is the towel. But there's more. Fast forward just a few hours, and now see the full extent of Christ's love. As dying on the cross, he loves to the very end, to his last breath. So the cross is the other hallmark of the Christian community, the towel and the cross. That's how we define love from now on, by service and sacrifice. That's the unique pattern of self-giving which every follower of Jesus is called to imitate, the towel and the cross. It's a pattern of life which cuts right across our natural instincts. But taking a towel and bearing a cross are the direction of travel now. We are to love like Jesus. That's the new principle. In our relationships, it means that we are to stop asking, what's in this for me? And we are to start asking, what can I give here? How do I serve him or her or them? For to love like Jesus moves us out of our comfort zones. We take a towel, we bend down, we wash feet. And when we love like that, we are going to risk rejection. But if I am loving like Jesus, I can't say as a Christian, that's it, no more sacrifices. I've had enough. I can't take any more. We love to the end. If the pattern of love is cross-shaped, you see, I can't disengage when things get difficult, when people disappoint and let me down. And friends, we will let each other down. But when that happens, we can't walk away. We can't stamp our feet and demand our rights. It's a contradiction in terms when a person who calls himself or herself a disciple of Jesus says in effect to others, I will love you this far, but no further. Or I will only love you if you notice me and give me my place. According to Jesus, this way of living is a command, isn't it? He's offering them a new commandment, not an optional extra. You know how when you're thinking about buying a car, you can get the basic model, can't you? Or you can have the one with all the add-ons, the better spec with the computerized navigation systems and the hands-free Bluetooth control and the park distance sensors front and back. Oh, the basic model gets you around okay, but the extras turn it into a luxury experience. We can think of the church in that way. You see, you got your basic model, Lansdowne. Sundays, sermons, songs, and maybe, if you're lucky, a little bit of midweek stuff. But love, well, love's an optional extra. We can have it if we've got the time and the energy, but if you don't have it, that's okay. It'll still work fine. Not according to Jesus. You see, according to him, love in the church is as basic as an engine is to a car. It's fundamental to who we are. It's part of what it means to be church. So there's the first element of a biblical community. It's based upon a new principle of love. It's the how, if you like, how we are to love. And that's like Jesus. Second element, we have a new priority for love. Here is the who we are to love. Christ's people, his family, love one another. You see, the command here is not to cultivate some, fluffy, vague sentiment about love, some general fellow feeling for humanity. No, this is a command about a very specific expression of love. I'm not inviting you to join the church, said the preacher as he asked people to bow their heads and close their eyes. I'm just inviting you to come to Christ. Do you know, I think that's a dangerous half-truth. It's not possible to make a commitment to Christ apart from a commitment to the church. Now, I'm not saying that joining a church makes someone a Christian. But I am saying that to identify your life with the person of Christ is to join your life with the people of Christ. I'm in love with Jesus. I just can't stand the church. Not so. To come to Christ, to love Jesus, is to become part of his body, the church. I think our problem may be a basic category error. The church, you see, is not to be identified as a building of bricks and mortar, but as a body, a group of people. The church is not a menu of programs from which we pick and choose, but this community to which we belong. So Jesus commands the disciples here to love each other. Not to love the creative children's program or the music ministry or the Bible study syllabus. Those things reflect the consumer-driven, customer-designed approach devised to attract the church data. So we think that we need accessible buildings with pleasant tree-lined grounds and convenient parking. And once we get them into the building, we need a latte waiting for them as they walk through the doors. A super sophisticated preschool ministry with a bouncy funhouse. A top-notch band that plays great blended worship every Sunday. And a feel-good presentation from a smooth preacher that makes everyone feel comfortable with themselves. Now look, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that all those things are irrelevant. Otherwise, we're going to be wasting an awful lot of money in the next few years on a £3 million regeneration building project. But I am saying that the church is not a building or a slick program-generating outlet to entertain Christians. No, it's a community. Some of the above lists that I just mentioned, the nice facilities and the well-run programs, oh yeah, they'll attract a crowd. I don't doubt that in the next few years, our wonderful new facility will attract a crowd. But our job is to turn that crowd into a community. And the best way that Jesus knows to do that is that his followers love each other. You see? So as that night the disciples looked around the room at each other, I guess they would have realized the huge implications of what Jesus was saying. It had been a long day. Tired feet and proud hearts were filling the upper room. Some of them had, we know from the gospel, had already been arguing about who was going to get the top jobs when Jesus began his new empire. So self-inflated were they that none of them could be bothered to do the servant's job. It was way beneath them. And during the meal, Judas walked out into the night, intent on betraying Jesus. Another of them, in our reading, Peter, in typical style, boasts that if Jesus was going away, then he was going with him, and he wouldn't run like the rest. But we know what Peter did just a few hours later. He denied even knowing Jesus. Do you see what we've got here? What a bunch. There was James and John, nicknamed the Sons of Thunder. You can guess their personality types, can't you? Then there was Levi, the ex-tax collector, the collaborator. Then there was this chap called Thaddeus, a known ex-terrorist. And here's Jesus commanding that lot of misfits from such socially different backgrounds to love each other. James and John love Thaddeus. Jesus has already said something very similar earlier in the evening. Again, just move your eyes back to verse 12. When he'd finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should what? What does he say? What do you expect him to say? You should also wash my feet? No, he doesn't say that. That's not the punchline. Maybe if it had been, it would have made the business of being a disciple a lot easier, because we'd be up for washing Jesus' feet, wouldn't we? Doing something for him. But that is not the way the sentence ends. You should also wash one another's feet. What? Peter, the denier's feet? Judas, the betrayer's feet? Thomas, the doubter's feet? I think the challenge of Christian discipleship lies not so much in serving Jesus, but in serving his disciples. And so Christ continues in the passage. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you what? Form a committee to discuss them? Develop a seminar series and produce a DVD with accompanying study notes? Bring it to a church meeting and vote on the proposition? No, you'll be blessed if you just do it. If you do them. And looking around our church community, there are bound to be plenty of opportunities for us to take a towel and be a servant to someone. Listen, folks, it doesn't have to be a big, showy thing. It can be something incredibly small. But the Lord Jesus, by his Spirit, will nudge us and say, so you're my disciple then? See that person? See that need? See that issue? Go on. Just do it. Pick up the towel. Don't throw it in. I guess my point is this. We are called to love a very diverse community. We are made up, aren't we, of different ages and cultures and backgrounds and expectations. And that is a huge challenge to us. And what is more, we are far from perfect. We will let each other down. We will rub others up the wrong way. We'll irritate and frustrate people. So do we then say, that's it, I can't be bothered with Lansdowne? No, you pick up the towel and you wash the very feet of those that may have kicked you. Folks, there is no easy or quick fix in building a community with that kind of quality. And we won't arrive at it by loving only those who like us or who we like. That's the easy bit. We have to break out of those in-groups to which we belong and widen our circles of connection and embrace others. Now, I know that in a church of this size, it's difficult, and we have to be realistic and accept that significant relationships are only possible anyway within a limited number of people. But that's one of the reasons why we have smaller home groups, cell groups. And if you don't yet belong to one of those, let me encourage you, sign up. You see, there's something very healthy about the intergenerational nature of those kinds of small groups that meet in homes. The wisdom, experience of age meets the energy and enthusiasm of youth. And anyway, church life will be very unsatisfactory. We'll have a very shallow experience of Lansdowne if we don't have those points of connection with others. Because if that's not the case, what happens? We will just flow in and out on a Sunday. It'll be pleasant enough, but it'll be pretty superficial. And we won't grow spiritually if we keep everything and everyone at arm's length distance. Apart from which, we're human beings. We're made for relationships. And that's because we bear the image of a God who is Father, Son, and Spirit. God himself is a loving trinity of persons, a social, not a solitary being. What's that African proverb? It takes a village to raise a child. It does. It takes a village to raise a child. Listen, it takes a church to raise a Christian. That's how we grow and develop, as part of a family, a village, if you like. There is something about being a disciple of Christ which can only be learned that way, in the village, in community. Now, I don't think that means that we have to sell up our houses and move in together and start wearing flip-flops. The point is, we can't learn what it means to be a disciple on our own. The Lone Ranger Christian is not a New Testament model. So you see, if all LBC offers you is a come to a church building, a sit and listen experience of your faith, then we are shortchanging disciples of Jesus. We will not produce disciples that way. We'll create sermon tasters and passive pew fillers. And that's why getting involved in some part of church life is vital. I don't know, serving in the welcome team, or stewarding people into the services on a Sunday, or volunteering for the coffee rota, or helping amongst the youth program. It's essential, you see, to be part of the village, contributing and involved with others. That's how we grow. And so do fill that form in. If you want to stop dating the church, and get involved and become part of the community God longs to see, then fill that form in and hand it to the welcome team or a steward as you go. You may not be staying for a stream afterwards. You may be going off for coffee in the hub or whatever. But please, fill one of those in. We'd love to see more people involved in the village. Because serving is, well, it's the opposite of our natural inclination. Rick Warren, one of the great pastors of the mega church Saddleback in California, comments that most of the time we are interested in serve us rather than service. We say, oh, I'm looking for a church that meets my needs and blesses me, not I'm looking for a place to serve and be a blessing. But the true disciple of Jesus stops asking, who's going to meet my needs, and starts asking, whose needs can I meet? The fact is, I cannot be who I am without other people. The social reality today for many of us is very different. You and I have not been born into a culture of community here in Western Europe, but into a culture of individualism, haven't we? So even though we're signed up to the Christian church, we still operate like this mentally. Well, it's my life, it's my time, it's my money, it's my decision, it's my future. So you see, even for us Christians, it takes a mega mind shift to move us into this new priority of love, which Jesus commands here. The priority of others, not self. All right, I'm nearly done. Third element, the new power of love. Listen again to our major text. A new command I give you, verse 34, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Here's the new power of love. Firstly, it's an evidence of personal faith in Jesus. How do I know I'm a Christian? If you want to know you're a Christian, the proof is not how many Christian meetings you attend, or how many church committees you sit on, or how many Christian books are on your bookshelves, or even how long you spend in prayer. If you want evidence for personal faith in Jesus, Jesus says it's how much you love other Christians, his body. Secondly, the new power of love, it's a reason that society will know we belong to Jesus. It's staggering and slightly unnerving that Jesus here gives the watching world the right to challenge the church, the disciple of his, and ask, how can you say you're Christians when you don't love each other? So you see, in the way that we respect and love the widow in the church whose children have left home, the way that we draw alongside the person struggling with depression, the family whose father has lost his job, the elderly whose health is failing. In all those ways, we signpost that we belong to the carpenter, to Jesus. And thirdly, the new power of love is a proof by which the world knows who Jesus is. This is extraordinary. The greatest defense of the truth of the gospel, which we can proclaim, is through the quality of our relationships with each other in the Lansdowne Lego family. How we work through our differences, how we manage and resolve conflict, how we speak of each other and to each other. Listen, not all our good sermons, not all our fine structures, not all our wonderful worship, but our love for each other. Not the scale of our building plans, not the size of our budget, but our love for each other. Not all our conferences and seminars, but our love for each other. The world needs to see what the Christian life looks like. So we, the messengers, are to embody the message. We are to show how it works. The world needs to read the gospel according to you. You see, in just the same way that God was fleshed out, made visible in Jesus, so Jesus is fleshed out, made visible through us. A very persuasive argument for the truth of Christianity is that a group of people, a large group of people like us, from different backgrounds, can love each other, accept, forgive, support, and value each other. Folks, the stakes are high. For Jesus says, when people in the world see the life of Christ in the church, they will believe the love of God for the world. That's the way the world will be won to Jesus. And that's why God longs to see this kind of loving community. Remember the context of this chapter? Jesus is about to leave them for the cross. But Jesus' death is not the end of his mission. The mission of Jesus becomes the mission of the church. The world will see him as they see us. As Jesus the Son was sent by the Father, so now Jesus sends us into the world by his Spirit. And the primary strategy of that is to love each other just as he has loved us. The greatest weapon we have is not high-profile advertising campaigns or live stream sermons. No, the greatest weapon we have is authentic lives that are different because of Christ. I'm not saying that preaching doesn't matter. I'm not saying that Bible study and Christian truth is unimportant. I am saying that there is nothing quite so eloquent and powerful as practical, intergenerational, multicultural love in a community. A loving, caring Christian community is the single most compelling proof that Jesus is alive and that his gospel is true. You see, how we live gives credibility to what we believe. Now, all this talk about love, therefore, does not have to turn the Christian in on him or herself, nor does it turn the church into a touchy-feely religious club. No, with arms and lives locked together, we are being sent into the world, not to hide from it behind the closed doors of a church building. So, what next for you in the community that God longs to see? Let's have one last look at the Lansdowne Lego family. There they are, about to walk inside. I don't doubt that there are people nervous about getting committed to the church, to Lansdowne or to any church for that matter. Perhaps I'm speaking to people who've tried it before and it didn't work out, and you got pretty hurt, and you're still carrying those fears and scars from the past. Maybe you fear being taken over by the institution and its routines. You want to protect your social life. Maybe you're still looking for the right church, but really you know that that's an excuse for avoiding commitment. And maybe you need to pray and talk to God about that kind of stuff. So why not, as we wrap up in a moment with a final song, as people are going to their streams and to the hub for coffee, come down the front here and pray and ask them to pray with you about not necessarily this particular message, but your heart for the church, your longing to get more involved. Maybe you do need to fill in one of those getting involved forms. Maybe you need to stop dating the church and buy the book or sign up for a small group. There'll be things that God's Spirit is telling us to do this morning. Little steps we can take so that we become part of this loving community that God longs to see.